Hey Nintendo fans, it's Jwitz here with something a little different. This video was originally recorded to be posted on Pokemon's YouTube channel in celebration of their 20th anniversary, but due to various legal issues, they weren't able to post it on their channel. I figured with the year of Pokemon's 20th anniversary slowly coming to a close, now would be as good a time as ever to share this older project. Pokemon Sun and Moon weren't out yet at the time of this recording, but here's my 20 favorite Pokemon moments over my life's history with the franchise. My first introduction to Pokemon came in late 1998, when the TV show began in local syndication around the United States, even before the show eventually hit the big Kids WB block. A big moment for me was the first episode I ever saw, the Electric Shock Showdown, featuring my now favorite gym leader of all time and introducing me in a great way to one of the biggest icons in media ever, Pikachu. After this episode, I was hooked. Naturally, after enjoying the show so much, it was only a few weeks before I got my first Pokemon game ever, Pokémon Red for the Game Boy. This game changed it all, from the addiction to collecting, meeting new friends in school by using the Game Boy's link cable connection, and learning the many mysterious rumors, like Missing No and Mew. Arguably the most involved I got with Pokemon, even growing up, were the Pokemon cards. The base set dropped in 1999 and has swept across my neighborhood and schools like wildfire. While most that collected the cards never touched the game, it was also this year that I found my first Pokemon League at Toys R Us. It was here that I got crushed by my area's best players and quickly learned what would become a lifelong passion for the Pokemon trading card game. When I think of a lot of these big firsts over the late 1990s, possibly the biggest for me was the release of the first Pokemon movie in 1999. My birthday's in late October, so we rented out a huge party room with my friends to watch the movie's premiere in early November. This event had a bit of everything, from collecting the movie's 4 exclusive trading cards to setting up a local Game Boy battle tournament. And speaking of parties, the other huge event from my childhood that I remember explicitly was the release of Pokémon Stadium. While I had purchased other games at release, Pokémon Stadium was the first game I ever pre-ordered, transfer pack and all. Not only did we get the big screen Pokemon battles that we had always dreamed of, but the mini-games were surprisingly fun and competitive. I swear we had as many as 10 different friends at our house just to check out the game, and for a random grade school day that wasn't even somebody's birthday, it always stuck in my head as a way that Pokemon could bring people together. The Pokemon trading card game for Game Boy had a long-lasting impact on me that I wouldn't even realize for years, but the first thing it immediately did was introduce most of my friends to the card game rules so that we could actually play against each other instead of just collecting. Over the long term, this became the first game that I ever decided to speedrun seriously, and you can still check out my streams running this game from time to time. Even though there is a lot of RNG, it's fun finding the different ways that you can deal with the cards that you're dealt. This game also led to an important video in my YouTube career, but we'll get to that one later. While most of my Pokemon memories are extremely positive, Pokemon is sometimes really great for getting you through some tough times. When my great-grandpa passed away, my close family used the new Pokemon Gold and Silver game to help us cope with the situation. It was a way to help the family connect when we were younger and dealing with the big loss. Gold and Silver, along with the DS remakes nearly a decade later, remain my favorite main series Pokemon games to this day. A quick note moving to the next one, you might wonder what happened between 2001 and 2005 to not have any items on this list. It was around this time that a lot of my friends stopped playing Pokemon, so while I did enjoy releases like Crystal and Ruby and Sapphire, it wasn't quite a time for me that cracks my personal top 20. However, moving to number 8, The Journey Across America started sweeping the US in 2006 with a similar celebration to the one that we're doing this year, for Pokemon's 10th anniversary. It was right at this time that I realized that there were a lot of Pokemon fans out there, my age and even a lot older than me, but I just wasn't looking in the right places to meet up with them. This reignited my passion for Pokemon in a major way, and began to shape my hype for the series over the next decade to come. It was also in this time that I met my wife Renee, who you might know as Renee Collects or Wits Girl. One of the major things that we bonded over early on was our mutual interest in Pokemon, and playing through the new Diamond and Pearl releases has become one of my fondest memories from Pokemon to date. Diamond and Pearl also came with a new era of Pokemon trading cards, and it was the first Diamond and Pearl set that got my family and I back into collecting and playing the trading card game. I love that the Darkness and Metal types finally got their own basic energy cards, the new concept of zero energy attacks, and the new Level X mechanic. This set would lead into my next big memory, attending official Pokemon trading card game tournaments. While I had played in some tournaments when I was young in the Wizards of the Coast era of the Pokemon trading card game, it wasn't until 2008 that I'd attend my first major tournament and start taking the game seriously. My first tournament game ever was against the eventual national champion, Kyle Sukovich, who now just so happens to work for Pokemon. I attribute a huge part of this to my favorite Pokemon TCG set of all time, Stormfront. that just released right before the tournaments that I attended. This single set, while a little weaker in trainers, added so many new styles of decks to the modern metagame that it became a perfect starting point to learn creative playstyles and competition. I've met hundreds of fantastic people through Pokemon sanctioned events, and those first days of competition remain some of my favorite. In late 2009, I decided to do something that would change my life completely. Run a YouTube channel about a topic that I loved, the Pokemon trading card game. I was really bored and decided to try something creative to spend my time, and it grew in a way that I never would have expected. While my first videos are extremely poor in quality and presentation, the content somehow found an audience that began to shape into a career for me over the years to come. I've been able to connect with Pokemon fans across the entire globe through this show, and the J-Wits persona that I created has stuck with me ever since. A few years later, in 2011, I found my true passion in YouTube, sharing facts and lore throughout video games. This began with my first Pokemon Fact of the Day video, all about Imakuni, a mysterious character in the Pokemon trading card game, as well as a real-life person that works with Pokemon to this day. This first fact video began to shape the content that I produce today, and I find it especially appropriate that Imakuni of all things is where I started. With the new Pokemon Generations TCG set, we would receive our first English print of Imakuni ever. It's like we've come full circle. 2010 and 2011 were my most successful years in the Pokemon TCG, which led to a great Pokemon World Championships run in San Diego. While the year's mid-season rule and format change ended up with me losing the ability to use my favorite Sableye-fueled SP list, I switched over to a fun Yanmega, Magnezone, Kingdra, Jirachi list that I took to 5th place in a huge field of the best players all around the world. While the dream did end in an unfortunate, unfinished Game 3 in time, it was an absolute blast to finally get to experience the thrill of the Pokemon World competition, and I've tried to attend the event, even just as a spectator, every year since. Just a few years later, Pokemon decided to reach out to players in the community with interest in commentary for live recording and streaming of their biggest events. While my years of competing were fun, it's even more of an honor to share the story of the Pokemon trading card game with an audience all around the world. It's great to work directly with Pokemon in this way, and it's been fantastic to see the many ways that Pokemon has expanded production, from new equipment to new casters each year. As the world of streaming continues to explode, I can't wait to see the many ways that TPCI will continue to grow the game as a spectator sport, where viewers can watch real Pokemon battles all over the world, just like in the anime. With the release of Pokemon X and Y was a massive movement in the Pokemon community. New Pokemon for the first time in years, the huge new Mega Evolution forms, and our first complete adventure on the 3DS. This new generation was special for me because I happened to be at New York at the time, and I got to experience my first traditional New York City Nintendo World launch party. It was unbelievable how many Pokemon fans gathered, in a line that ultimately went blocks and blocks throughout the city. I met so many like-minded Pokemon fans, and it's been unreal attending a party like this, when the first big Pokemon party I was ever at had just 10 people. King of the Nerds was a reality competition show all about celebrating unique and uncommon passions around the world, and it was something else to have my first ever experience on television. While I unfortunately wasn't able to compete on the show as long as I would have liked, I met a wonderful cast of like-minded individuals that I still talk with today, and I loved being able to share my passion for Pokemon with a few more people around the world. I still think the avatar they chose for me was downright terrifying though. 2014 brought a major milestone to my YouTube channel that I still can't believe to this day. 1 million subscribers. When I first joined YouTube in 2009, there were only 5 channels with more than 1 million subscribers, and it was my goal for something as different as Pokemon to be able to reach that 1 million mark someday. And while there are now nearly 2,000 channels with that same milestone, it's been an incredible honor to be one of them. I still can't believe that this many people are interested and supportive of my content, and while we do talk about other Nintendo franchises as well on the show, it was the Pokemon community that largely made this happen. I've touched on how Pokemon can bring people together, and for me, it helped me find a lifelong partner. Renee and I got married last year, and while we didn't quite go overboard on Pokemon theming, its influence still made its way into our wedding, from dozens of people who I met through the series attending it, to decorations and gifts made by friends, and of course, a massive playing of the Pokemon theme song to end the night. I know Justin Flynn was feeling it. And finally, coming to this year, being a part of Pokemon's official Pokemon Day stream on Twitch for the 20th anniversary was some of the most fun I've had with Pokemon in ages, where we explored everything from the original titles that started it all, to free-for-all Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire nonsense, to Pokemon Stadium minigames. It reminded me how at its core, Pokemon is the most fun I've had from a single franchise of anything. Happy 20th, Pokemon. You've brought me to places that I never thought I'd see, people I never knew I'd meet, and I've had more fun than I ever thought I'd have in a lifetime. Good luck with your big releases this year, and here's to 20 more fantastic years.